The Ortho Dial-N-Spray. Truly a good product, a reliable product. I'd recommend anybody who's doing their own lawn treatments to purchase one of these. It's in a $10 price point, somewhere right around there. But one of the biggest or more common complaints we hear about this is from users who are spraying a thicker solution that the unit tends to clog. And there's a number of videos on YouTube you can watch that provide a couple solutions, and there's really two solutions out there, and I'm just using this for illustrative purposes. But the first one is to remove the mesh filter that's at the end, or remove it from that strainer that's part of the hose assembly. The second solution is to remove the strainer entirely by simply snipping it off with a pair of scissors or a knife, returning the weight to the end of the hose and securing it in place with either a rubber band or a cable tie like shown here. And I did that, and I had relatively good results. But what I was finding was when I was spraying, it would work really well, and then as I went through the product in the tank, I found that it was no longer pulling solution up the hose. So the cause was, what was happening was when the hose was in the bottom of the tank, the weight was sliding up the hose and was forcing or causing the hose to kind of loop upwards. So as you can imagine, as I got to the bottom of my tank, the end of the hose was not pulling up from the solution. The other thing I found was, even if the weight was at the bottom of the hose, if there's any kind of upward tilt on this hose, you'd have the same effect. Not nearly as extreme, but it was something I was experiencing. And if you have a particular mix or dilution ratio in your tank and you're spraying it, you want to be able to pull as much, if not all, that solution out to ensure you're applying as much of a uniform application to your lawn. So I built on this solution here, and I'll show you what I did to address that, because I wanted to do something that not only kept the hose tip to the bottom of the tank, but also ensured that it stayed there throughout the spraying experience. So the first thing I did was first just cut the hose to a length that's reasonable. I cut off quite a bit off, because the hose from the box, or as you buy it, is rather long, and I think that's by design, because this works with not only this container here, but you can screw it directly onto the concentrate bottles, and for that reason they have quite a long hose. But if your intention is to strictly use the provided container here, you really don't need all that hose length. So what I did was I ended up using, this is a fishing sinker. It's a 2-ounce fishing sinker that I secured to the hose with a couple cable ties. And this works in a couple of ways. One, it's always going to ensure that the hose is laying flat along the bottom of the container, right? So no matter where the hose is inside, that sinker is always going to want to lay flat, horizontal to the base. The second thing is it allows that hose to work into a corner without any issues, and you can see there how low it is to the actual base. So naturally, when you're spraying, you may have the container aimed forward a little bit. So in this orientation, you're guaranteed to pull just about all the product out of the container. The other thing I made sure I did was, when I made the cut on the hose, I cut it at an angle. And the reason for that is, if the hose were to become flat to the actual container, having an angle, let me see if I can show that, ensures that you don't have a blockage. It would be in order for a blockage to take place, you'd have to have something like this, which would be kind of unusual, I think. So that just, by cutting at an angle, it provides that clearance for suction. So I just want to show that to you. This is a solution that I found was an enhancement to what's already available out there on the web. Those of you who are just doing the solution that I showed you with the yellow hose and having success, great. But for me, I needed a little bit more, and this was my solution here, was fixing that sinker to the hose to ensure that the pickup is always at the base of the Dial-N-Spray. But yeah, go pick one of these up. Super cheap, super effective. I use it for applying humic acid to my lawn. I've had great results. It's been extremely reliable since the modification, and I'd encourage you to check it out. If you like what you see here, like my video, subscribe to my channel. I hope to add similar videos that add value to the do-it-yourselfer. A couple tips I just wanted to share real quick is, if you don't have a sinker, if you were to use a bolt, I think you can achieve the same results if you were to just take a bolt. You need something with a little bit of mass, right? If you take a decent sized bolt, probably preferably a stainless steel, and you were to fix it to the hose with a couple of cable ties, I think you can achieve the same thing. Just that I know with the sinker, you have a good substantial amount of weight there, so it does carry the hose to the lower portion of the tank, but you could potentially achieve the same with the right bolt selection. The other thing I did was on the end, because I have over 11,000 square foot of yard, so I'm having to fill the tank a few times during application. And what I did was I added a quick release here. And what this allows me to do, and on the end of my hose, I have one of those inline shutoff valves where you just cut the water supply off. So I'll cut the water supply off. I'll use this quick connect, remove the sprayer. That way I can take the sprayer with the tank to an area where I can work, fill it up with solution, come back to the hose, click it on, turn on my shutoff, and I'm good to go.